cortisol is so demonized. Oh, you have to lower your cortisol, or your cortisol is too high or whatever. And really, we want our cortisol to be high in the morning. Welcome back to the Harness Your Health podcast. I am here today with my friend Alex, who is a nutrition student, and we are going to go back to basics. We're going to talk about the foundational things that really every person needs to know for their health and why I even started this podcast, why I do everything that I do, and try and get this information out to you. So thank you for being here, Alex, and this is going to be fun.
Course, I'm excited to go back to the basics.
Yeah. Awesome. It's always more fun to have these as conversations than for me to just do it on my own. So I think you know this because you know me and everything that I stand for, but I think what I really want people to know and why we list the foundations assessment that I created in the show notes for every single one of our podcast episodes is that this is really a great place for anyone to start. Anyone who is just looking to improve their health, looking to maintain their health, looking to overcome a health condition or disease or anything, this is such a foundational way of looking at your health that it really applies to anyone.
Yeah, it's like a handbook. We weren't ever given a handbook for how to live properly.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people could use, including
Good.
myself.
I just love it that you said that because I really do feel that way. I've had a lot of questions from people who are like, is this for your type of client that you take care of? Or is this for a certain type of person? And I'm like, it's really for anyone. It could be for your children, even. It's just the foundational way that our bodies are built. And that's really what we're going to talk about today. We're going to try and explain that so that people understand. And then also talk about what, good functional day should look like, and then what our modern society and just some of the things that most people have going on, how that impacts it and creates dysfunction and really disrupts your biology. And so that's what we're going to get into.
Yeah, it's if you have two thumbs and you're breathing, this is for you.
That's awesome. Even if you don't have two thumbs, I would
You don't
say.
have to have two thumbs if you are supposed to have thumbs.
Yes, that's awesome. I love it. Okay, so let's just start from the beginning. First of all, maybe I should just mention the assessment. So the assessment is a 37 question assessment. It's really quick. It takes maybe 5, maybe 10 minutes if you're really putting a lot of thought into the answers. But I think really you should just be answering that what comes to the top of your mind when you read the question. It's very simple and straightforward. And it's very simple. You literally take the assessment, you put your email in there, it gives you an email at the end and tells you what your priorities are based on how you answered it. And so the way I like to explain this is in the realm of circadian rhythm, because the sun comes up every day, the sun goes down every day. And sure, at different places in the world, that's at different times. That's not the point. The point is that happens and that our biology and physiology, the way our body functions, is very in rhythm with that, or it should be. And that's really how we've evolved as humans. And so when we make our daily rhythms aligned with that, then it's only setting up all of our processes in our body for success.
Yeah, people don't think about it because it's so simple. Up until I was probably 26, that didn't apply to me. I was invincible. Then, like,
Of
as you
course.
get older, you're like, "Oh, okay, maybe I need to, figure out how this is supposed to work. I'm not this invincible 21-year-old not caring." But, like, now
Yeah.
it's like, "Okay, I'm starting not to feel great. My actions have consequences, so let's figure out what the sun does and, like, why it's important to me."
That is the whole point of this. If you
Right.
want to look into a little bit of research about this, we can put some information in the show notes about some of the research. There are some very predominant researchers who have done a lot of research in this area, and this is how I learned about it. So I think rather than bringing it up here, maybe we'll just go into that. I'll put some links in the show notes so you can look into it a little bit. But this is really the whole premise is that your day starts with the light. At least that's how it did when we were much less evolved. Now we have lights in our homes, we have lights on our phones, like all of the things. But really, the sun came up and we were outside. And so that is step number one. And so the way I like to think about this in a healthy way or a functional way is going outside in the morning, preferably first thing when you wake up. So what most people do, and I would put myself into this category sometimes, is they look at their phone, right? So you're like, what's on my calendar today? What do I need to do? Did I get anything important overnight? And so that is telling your brain, that is sending a light signal to your brain, but it's definitely not the light signal that we want because the sun has all kinds of different rays that are much healthier and have much better purpose for predominantly our hormone alignment. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but that is really what we're talking about. We want the sunlight to come in through your eyes and for that to signal to your brain that it's morning. It's morning time. It helps you feel more alert pretty instantly. If someone ever wakes up from a poor night's sleep, I always suggest to them to go outside. And usually that's not what they want to do. They kind of want to hole up and cuddle in on the couch or whatever, right? Because you're feeling really tired. But that is the most important thing. So no sunglasses, go outside. You can experiment with the different amounts of time that you're out there. But I would say if this is really hard for you, just start with 5 minutes.
And what about if it's cloudy?
Yeah, so if it's cloudy, you definitely need a little bit more time outside. But I would say that even if it's cloudy, it's more light than when it was dark, right? So you're still going to get the effect from having it. And I just always tell people to not beat yourself up about this if you don't have a ton of extra time or if you're trying to restructure your morning so that you can do this. Just be consistent. Consistency is always better than saying, oh, I can't spend 20 minutes out there, so I'm not going to do it at all. Just at least do something.
I live in Western New York, so for 8 months out of the year, I can't go outside. Is
Yeah.
fire window fine?
Yeah, so windows have a natural coating on there that deflects some of the rays that we're really trying to get you exposed to. So it's probably better than nothing, but it's definitely not ideal. So when you say that you can't go outside, why is that?
Let's say it's like a snowstorm or it's like negative 10 degrees or something, which now that I think about it, probably doesn't happen that much.
Yeah.
And I think I would definitely use that as an excuse if it was cold. But what I'm gathering is you're saying bundle up and get out there. Is
Yeah, that
what
is
you're
what
saying.
I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, I live in Colorado and we're lucky that we have a lot of sunshine here, especially in the morning. And the other day I woke up and it was raining, which is very unusual. And so I was like, oh, and I grew up in Oregon, so I'm not definitely not afraid of the rain, but I didn't really want to go and stand outside in the rain. And so we have a covered front porch. And so I just sat on my front porch. So I wasn't like directly in the sun, but the light was there. So I would just say, even if it's a snowstorm or even if it's cloudy, like you mentioned before, it's lighter than if it was dark. So, from a ray perspective, like the different rays that are coming through, I wouldn't get hyper focused on that, but literally just think about that it's light versus dark.
How does it affect my day if I don't?
Uh,
What if I wake up, roll out of bed, straight to the shower on my way to work?
Yeah. So the beauty of the light is it really is a hormonal cascade that it signals in your body. So many people have heard of hormones. A lot of times when we think about hormones, we're thinking about sex hormones. If someone says, oh, I need to take hormones or balance hormones or something like that, automatically I think people think about estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. But you have so many hormones. I don't even remember how many there are, honestly, but it's like 80 or 90 hormones. And hormones are all very intimately connected together. And so the circadian rhythm is influenced by your hormones. So when you don't go outside and get that light, and especially if you have a bad night's sleep, then your brain just automatically never really turns on. You might feel less alert. It's going to affect other hormones. A lot of times people feel like they don't feel hungry in the morning. That can be from that. And so that is often used as an excuse to not eat breakfast in the morning. And if you have dysregulation in your nervous system, you have a lot of stress in your life, or there's other things going on energy wise, you don't feel very good, it's going to dysregulate all of that. And so it sounds so simple that just that light is going to do those things for you, but it really does. It's a complete cascade. It's also really influential on digestive hormones. Your digestion is more on point in the morning. And so it really is very dysfunctional to not eat in the morning. And then if you add coffee or caffeine on top of that, that's like a double whammy for improper hormone function.
And that's crazy because I feel like nowadays everyone is so rushed, and that is a typical morning for a lot of people is get up, coffee, get in the car, go to work. I feel like that's so normalized now,
Yeah.
which
Yeah, I think I consider myself the supreme problem solver, and I don't think that every person has to do this exactly the same way. I tend to work with a lot of people who work in the healthcare system, and so a lot of times they are getting up before the sun is even up, and they don't really have a choice. They have a shift that starts at 6:30 or 7 or something. And so we work together to figure out how you could get some sunlight in your morning without it being if you have to take a shower when you get up and it's still dark outside, right? And so there's lots of different things you can do, but I would just say that if this is you and you're thinking, "Oh, I can't do that because I can't fit that in," I would just challenge you to think that is a belief that you have that you can't fit that into your morning, and you just need to reassess your morning. What is your morning routine? And if you want to give this a try, it's absolutely free. It's accessible to most people. I can't really think of anyone. I guess you could say people who live in parts of the world where you don't get the sunlight or whatever. That's going to be a lot harder, obviously, but that's a pretty small amount of people. I think anybody could really figure out how to do this in their way. Take your coffee, take your breakfast, take your dog, take your child, like anything, take people outside. I'm constantly kicking my teenagers outside and they don't like it very much. But if they're grouchy in the morning, it's like, go outside.
yeah. And then so after that, that's the perfect morning. You know,
Yeah.
sunlight, eating within an hour,
Yeah.
and then
Yes.
yeah, what's
No, I
next?
didn't mention this. Really, what we're looking for is like a healthy cortisol response pretty quickly when you wake up. We want your cortisol to be up and elevated in the morning because that is what helps you get going in the morning. It's just a function of how our bodies work. And the normal cortisol curve is it goes down gradually as the day goes on, and then it's low at night. And that way melatonin can be high. And I know we'll get to that. Cortisol is so demonized. Oh, you have to lower your cortisol, or your cortisol is too high, or whatever. And really, we want our cortisol to be high in the morning. We want a proper cortisol curve. You can have dysfunctional cortisol curves, and we can do a whole episode on that. But really, that's what we're looking for. And so we don't want something to amplify our cortisol like caffeine. We want that to come from light if you need help with that. And it really works very well to adjunct your cortisol. So that's really the morning, just like you described, like getting outside and getting light, feeling alert and awake, eating something so that you feel like your body has some nutrition and some nutrients to help it run throughout the day. And you're not just fueling on caffeine or something to keep you going. And then a little bit later in the day, like midday, people often describe that they have lunch and then they have really poor energy after lunch. And this is actually physiologically pretty typical that in the middle part of the day or the middle part of the afternoon, that like 8 to 10 hours after you woke up, that you have lower energy. That's not a really horrible thing, but obviously in our modern culture, many people are working, they have to function. And so there's a lot of different things you can do to help with energy later in the day. But again, this is where we bring in the concept of blood sugar and we're thinking about energy production in the body because many people are eating something for lunch that's really going to kind of put them on a blood sugar pendulum or a blood sugar swing, and then they're going to crash in the afternoon. So you have this normal physiological kind of downturn of your energy. And then you also ate a bunch of carbs or sugar for lunch, and then you crash really hard at like 3 or 4 o'clock.
Yeah, even like breakfast too. When I was younger, I would eat the cereal or whatever. And I feel like that really set me up poorly for the day. And then at 2 p.m., 3 p.m., I called that my lay down time because like in college, I was like, that's my lay down time because I always would get so tired. And then sometimes coffee even made me more tired at that point. Like
Interesting.
my blood sugar was just out of control. And I
Yeah.
never realized that slump, the afternoon slump that I think probably everyone experiences, had to
Mhm.
do with what I was eating. I had no idea once I started adding fiber and protein and having a protein breakfast. I was like, oh, I feel great. I don't need a coffee at 2 p.m. Maybe like once in a while. But once I really honed in on managing and making my blood sugar stable, the ebbs and flows that were supposed to happen, I think I felt the most incredible difference. that I didn't
Yeah.
know I didn't even know was a thing. I didn't even know I could have that much effect over it. Like
Yeah. It's
crazy.
it's so amazing to me because I think once people intuitively think about this, it makes total sense, right? But if you are growing up as a kid, if you have cereal is the perfect example. Cereal in your house, it's marketed to kids. Parents buy it. If they take their kids to the store, the kids are asking for it. As soon as they have it, it's like all bets are off. They want the cereal. And so cereal inherently has very little protein, very little fat, and you really need protein and fat and fiber, as you mentioned, to sustain your energy levels throughout the day. So that's what helps you go from eating breakfast at 8 o'clock to lunch at noon without needing a snack, is you need to eat enough for that. And it's not just from a calorie perspective, it's really a nutrient perspective. So protein, fats, those things make such a huge difference when paired with a carbohydrate. It's not that you don't get the carbohydrate, it's just that you eat that and then your blood sugar goes up and your body naturally wants to get that down. So it releases a hormone called insulin to make that happen. And so when you're on this blood sugar roller coaster during the day, let's say you eat cereal for breakfast and then you're starving 2 hours later. And so you grab some quick snack that's probably mostly carbohydrate centric. And then again, you're just on this roller coaster of up and down. Then you're starving at lunch again. Maybe your lunch is decent and decently well rounded. Maybe it's not. But then you have that natural kind of lay down time in the afternoon, and it's accentuated by this roller coaster that you just went on for the last 6 hours. It's no wonder you're feeling exhausted.
And I guess why would that feel like a roller coaster? What about insulin going so sharply down? Because like when you think of a roller coaster, if you're going really high up, like pretty steeply, like you can only expect to come down pretty steeply. But why does that feel so crazy? Like why does that make me hungry?
Yeah, so really, if we're talking about cereal, or we could even add in here like a piece of toast or
A donut. Yeah, I
Danish
feel like
or
donuts for
donut.
breakfast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Anything like that's a traditional, or if you go to work and they have a meeting and it's donuts and pastries, all of those things have a lot of sugar and processed carbohydrates in them. And so what that does to your blood sugar is significantly more, increases it significantly more than if you also had protein and fat and fiber mixed with that. Let's say, for example, you really want the donut. For me, I love maple bars. I don't know what, I think it's a West Coast thing, but maple bars are my thing. Could never eat a full maple bar anymore, but I just want a bite of the maple bar. I was going to a meeting and we were served something that was like protein, fat, and some carbs, and I wanted a slice of the maple bar. I would cut a piece of it off and eat some of the maple bar with the rest of my meal. And so, what that does is when you eat carbs with protein, fat, and fiber, it blunts the effect of the blood sugar in your body. And so instead of your blood sugar going from 80 to like 120, that's what would happen with the protein, fat, and fiber. If you're eating carbohydrate on its own, if you just ate the maple bar by itself or you ate the cereal by itself, it might shoot up to 150 or something. It's a much higher spike of blood sugar, and that's much more alarming to the body. So then the body releases insulin. It's in this alarm stage. It releases an amount of insulin to get the blood sugar out because it doesn't want excess blood sugar in your bloodstream. It tries to keep your bloodstream under very tight control. And so it's moving that blood sugar out. It has to go somewhere and be stored somewhere as energy So it's stored as fat, it's potentially stored as glycogen in your liver or your muscle, but it's out of your bloodstream. And so then what happens is your blood sugar comes down. And then if it was too much insulin or the response was too much by the body because it wasn't really sure what was happening, then it might drop down below that 80. So now all of a sudden you have low blood sugar and that makes you feel hungry and it makes you feel jittery. And you're like, whoa, I need to eat again. And so that's where that mid-morning snack came in. You're like, I'm shaky. I need to eat. And this was me when I was working as a nurse. I would eat something for breakfast. And even if I did try and eat a little bit of protein or fat, I just struggled to eat a big enough meal that I can make it to lunch. And I'm on my feet, I'm busy. And so when I would get to lunch or get to that mid-morning time, I need to eat something with protein and fat to keep me going. Otherwise, you're just on this roller coaster of up and down where your body is putting more insulin out. And that's really what creates insulin resistance. And it's not something that we want. That takes decades to develop, but we're talking about the day here and now, right? We're not talking about decades from now, but just so people know, because they probably heard about that. And so for your day, you're absolutely right that eating protein and fat in the morning sets you up for the rest of your day. It is one of the most important things. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Let's say I'm like having cake or whatever for the birthday. If you eat a vegetable before, could that lower the blood sugar?
Yeah, they've actually done studies on that, that eating fiber first before you eat something that's sugary or a lot of processed carbohydrate, or just saving that processed carbohydrate towards the end of your meal. Let's say you're at a birthday party, you eat more of a well-rounded meal. So you eat some fiber, protein first, and then make sure there's a little bit of healthy fat in there. If you have that sugary piece of cake after, that it has much less impact on your blood sugar. It doesn't raise your blood sugar to the same degree as if you ate the cake like all by itself.
My other question is, I've also heard walking after a meal does tremendous things for blood sugar. Is
Yep,
that
there's some great studies on this too. That most of the studies are on walking. There's a great study about doing squats every hour that's related. But basically, the way to think about it is you're expending some sort of energy after your meal when your blood sugar is high. So instead of your body just shuttling that blood sugar and storing it as fat, which most people don't want, you're going to burn it. And so just by using your muscles to go for a walk, your leg muscles are some of the biggest muscles in your body. Or if you're doing squats or doing, like some people like to dance or do other things that are just going to expend energy, your muscles are soaking up that energy and using that energy versus having that energy be stored. I think if people are eating really well-rounded meals and they don't have a huge blood sugar spike after their meal, they don't necessarily have to do that. Some people just like to have the practice of that, of doing the movement after they eat. And this can be like 10 minutes. It doesn't have to even be very long. I make the excuse that if I'm going to do laundry, walk up and down the stairs after, that counts because I think it does. It's the same idea. But just that you would expend that energy and it wouldn't be stored. And so, yes, it's not going to have the same ping pong effect or roller coaster effect.
yeah, makes sense.
So then when we're getting to dinner time, and this is, I mentioned bookends of the morning or the beginning, but I didn't really describe it. Really, I like to think of this as the bookends of your day. And so the way to get started thinking about this is how am I starting my morning and how am I finishing my day? And so people eat dinner at so many various times all throughout the day, right? And so it's hard also with time change. So if in the winter here, the sun goes down behind the mountains at 4:30, 5 o'clock, it's dark, right? And so in the summer, we have much more daylight, which is great. But like, how does that influence your eating? And so I think in the summer, people tend to eat later. It's a little bit more social. I would imagine in Western New York, where it's cold, most people aren't outside in the winter eating dinner. And so it's really the way to think about it is like, where is my dinner timed for when I'm going to bed? And so if you normally go to bed at, let's say, 10 o'clock, it's good to have your dinner finished at the minimum 2 hours before you're going to go to bed. It would be even better to have it be 3 hours. But if this is hard for you, I would just start with something. Pick one number, even if it's an hour, and then gradually work your way backwards from that. If your blood sugar is higher and your insulin is up to get that blood sugar down, then you cannot have an appropriate melatonin response. And melatonin is really the opposite hormone for cortisol as far as on a graph, if you look at it. So cortisol should be high in the morning and low at night, and melatonin should be high at night and low in the morning. And they're just ping pong from each other. And so if you have high insulin circulating in your body because you ate a meal or anything that's going to raise your blood sugar, it is going to completely suppress your melatonin. And there's a lot of people who take melatonin to sleep. And so that's basically also suppressing your body's own natural production of melatonin. Now, melatonin can be really helpful for jet lag and different situational things, but on an everyday basis, taking it because you can't fall asleep because you're really full or because you're wired after eating and you ate really late, this is the number one thing to work on at the end of the day.
Eating at least 2 hours early,
Yeah.
and your body should be able to create the melatonin that it needs, right?
Yeah, 2 to 3 hours. And I would say if you're eating a lot of carbohydrate at your dinner, you probably need to have a larger window of time in there just because it takes so much time to get that carbohydrate out of your bloodstream or the blood sugar down and the insulin coming down. And so, nothing happens instantaneously. It's not like your insulin drops and then your melatonin goes up. It takes a little
Right.
time for things to
Right.
happen. And if you're like going out, let's say you're going out to dinner with friends or something, and you're going to be eating pizza or pasta or something that like this has a lot of carbs in it, then maybe just think that you need to make your bedtime even a little bit later or try and push the dinner a little bit earlier if you can. You can't always do that. So again, it's not like getting hung up on every day here on some of the days that are a little more of the outlier that you can't always control the timing as much. It's like all of those other days that you really can control. What can you do here?
Yeah, stuff happens. It can't be perfect, but insulin resistance doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
But if you keep doing the same thing every day, that's how it happens overnight.
Exactly. What happens is that everything is silent, but still happening inside your body. And then you can find out if you poke and prod a little bit and know what to look for. But then you get the symptom someday or you're the signal from your body, right? And then you're like, why am I feeling this way? It's been brewing for a long time. The other part about the nighttime or the end of the day bookend is light, back to light again. Like ideally, if we were outside viewing the sun going down and watching that process actually happen, so that your body is getting triggered and your brain is getting triggered by the light going down, and then not being influenced by light. And this is probably one of the hardest things for people to do. But there are so many simple things you can do. It could be simply just turning a lot of your lights off or down, dimming them, having low light in your house, like signaling your body. If you have kids, this is like the number one thing to do. If your kids are like wound up at night, turn the lights down because they normally have pretty good circadian rhythm. And it really is helpful to get them to unwind. A lot of people use screens to unwind themselves or to unwind for their children. And I would just say you have to be really careful about the blue light that comes through your screen. It blocks melatonin. It definitely can disrupt your rhythm. And so it would be better to have intentional time before you actually go to sleep where you're not on a screen at all. And so that is something that most people have to really look at as an individual process of what is my routines and how can I influence my habits to make this better for me.
It sounds like the eyes are very sensitive to hormone production,
Yeah.
which is interesting.
Remember, a lot of hormone feedback and production and or feedback comes through your brain. So really the light is coming through your eyes, but it's signaling to your brain and these foundational parts of your brain that help regulate hormones. And remember what I said at the beginning is that hormones are all interconnected. They often feed off each other. And so that's really the trouble with taking something like melatonin for sleep is then you're affecting other hormones potentially, and you don't even realize that. Working with your body's own natural rhythm is the best way to optimize your own natural hormone function, which affects your energy, which affects your blood sugar regulation, which affects everything. And so that's why this part is just so foundational. So I developed just a short guide that we will put the link in the show notes for everyone who's listening that the way you can get started with this. I think still ultimately taking the assessment and figuring out what your priority is for your body based on how you're answering those questions. But then secondarily, this PDF is really help you establish the bookends. So it will review what we've talked about here and how you can get started. Most everyone asks me, do I start at night? Do I start in the morning? I really feel like the best way to start is in the morning and build your routine as the day goes on. But for some people, it might make more sense to start at night if their night is just really dysregulated. And so just really think about your own habits and where you are struggling and what would influence you the most. Because just like you said, these habits build on each other and they're very simple. And if we try and do a 180 and change everything all at once, most of the time, nothing will stick. We just try and willpower our way through it. But if we make these small, actionable changes that will build on each other, and then all of a sudden we're like, I don't even remember that I used to do that other thing. And you just replaced it with a different kind of habit.
Yeah, and I think what's cool about the next 3 or 4 weeks of the series that you're starting is that it gives us a reason to do it because I think it's really a lot easier to have a habit if you understand why you're doing it. And I think a lot of people are doing a lot of things and don't understand why. And I
Yes.
think if you understood why, it would give you a lot more motivation to do why you should eat protein, fat, and carbs in a meal, or why you should see the sun. Having those tools in your toolbox and knowing why you have the tools. Like I have a Phillips head because when I have a screwdriver that needs a Phillips head, I use a Phillips head. So I think
Yeah.
that's what's going to be really cool about this series.
Yeah, absolutely. So, really, we set this up. So, this is the overview episode. And then next week, we're going to release the gut series, which will basically be a little bit different than how we've done it before. And this is how all the little mini series will come out is we'll do a 3-part series on the gut, which the gut is like one of the most talked about topics in health. People know and realize that the gut is so foundational, but they don't completely understand how to address it, or they think that they have to do all these extreme things to address it. And so, step one with the gut is to do the foundational things that we talked about today. And then, step two, that we'll go into next week with the little mini series, is really how your digestion works, how your immune system and your gut barrier works, and your microbiome. Those 3 things together are going to pull a lot of this information together for people, I think, so they really understand, like you said, the why and why this is important and how you can make some changes for yourself.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think it's a very popular topic right now.
Yeah.
People want to know more in a digestible, pun intended, way.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. So stay tuned for that. We'll have that series. We'll have a series on the nervous system because the nervous system is another pillar in my assessment. And we'll talk about the coordination of that with digestion, circadian rhythm, the gut, and then a mini series on nutrition. And then we're going to do a whole episode on hormones because we talked about hormones a little bit today, but I'm going to explain a little bit more of the cascade so that people understand like how priority hormones work in the body, like where sex hormones come in. What about all these other hormones that we're hearing about, like GLP-1, ghrelin, leptin, hunger hormones? There's so many different hormones. And I really want to help people to make sense of that so that they can understand that really the premise for me is just to stop thinking about our health in like, I can't sleep. What do I take for sleep? Right? It's what if the answer to your sleep problem was your circadian rhythm, was your bookends of your day? That would be a better place to start than be like, what supplement or medication do I take to sleep? Because that's not really fixing your sleep problem. And if you really want to get to the bottom of this, any health situation, you have to do it with the building of these foundational principles.
And only you know your habits. So
Exactly.
it makes it, you know what you're doing. You know
Exactly.
if you're not getting morning light in the morning.
Yeah. And so just be honest with yourself and
Yeah.
gentle with yourself. You don't have, like I said before, you don't have to do a 180.
Mhm.
You just literally need to start with one structured thing. And like you said, these episodes are going to be coming out over the next weeks. And so you could take some information from this episode now and think about what you're doing and then implement something and work on that for a week and be consistent and then see how you're feeling the following week and reflect on that and then listen to those gut episodes and think about what's going on with your gut, right? And so I think it'll be really helpful for people. Thank you so much for being here, Alex. And thank you to the listener for being here as always. Check out the Health Foundation's assessment on my website. The link is in the show notes. And also that special bookends PDF will have that link there, as well as some of the research about circadian rhythm. So thank you for being here.
Thanks.
The information shared on this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. I am not a medical doctor, and this content is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Please consult with a qualified healthcare professional before making any decisions related to your health, especially if you have a medical condition or are taking medications.